developments at pretty much any time in most authorities. So residents go and campaign to an elected member contacts, and then it gets called in. So as much as you can say, it's this or it's that, you realise that actually you haven't necessarily got the authority to do so. Now, what should happen more is that you give caveated comments. You give your opinion about it early on in the process, and you say what you think will happen, with the caveat that actually the person you're dealing with should be familiar enough with the process to know that at the 11th hour it could all fall apart with the best will in the world and the best intentions of that particular officer and the people involved. Suddenly the project gets hijacked by sort of NIMBYs or bananas, is my favourite new term for it.
Can I just say
yes.
This is a huge problem, certainly. Huge problem, certainly. It shouldn't be the case that you go into a planning authority, show them, have long meetings, and end up with no results because there's some senior person up there who's going to make some arbitrary, subjective thing, and it can happen. In our case, we've seen it happen a year into the process. You get all these people that have it, and someone up the ladder of the pyramid hasn't been able to get off their arse to even look at it. And then, after you think you're just about to get permission, this person waltzes in and says, I don't agree with anything.
I think
it's so subjective, the system, and it should not be subjective. Without certainty, then the vagaries of some person, some boss, some person around the back. It's too democratic. There's too many people.
I just want to make a point that, again, sitting on a planning committee, I do not believe that the rules we have actually promote the design. I've seen many things come before me that I would actually like to refuse and cannot because they meet policy in some way. So I don't know, most of you are architects in this room, and I would like to see much higher design coming forward, and I want to see the promotion of design panels, which not every authority, including my own, has not taken on at the moment. But, yeah, so we agree on that. But when you come to say the guy higher up, it actually ends with my committee. And I am the common man. And I am allowed to determine on behalf of the community, if they take away that layer, if they take away my right to represent my community in that way, to challenge the officers, to challenge the system, to challenge your design, I think we'll have a problem.
You're not the guy higher up.
Yeah?
No, you're not the guy higher up. The guy higher up is the person who's employed, the civil servant who's employed as a ultimate design development co-officer, who decides whether or not a positive report will be given to you as a committee member to decide.
There is no such thing.
It's all very clear that it's the committee over here and there's the officers over here. The problem is we can't even get to the committee because we're being stopped by the officers.
The report has hooks in it. Agreed?
Yeah.
And the hooks tell me where to go. There's a local residence. So therefore I know where to go by those hooks, and I use those hooks in committee.
Why can't you, as a planning application committee, if you don't like a design, whatever the officer has said, why can't you say, no, we won't pass it?
If I don't like it, or if it doesn't meet policy, because unlike other committees within the council, I'm a regulatory and statutory committee, and I have to have due regard to policy. I can't just go against it. One, I would be opening us to appeals, although I cannot return anything to an officer just because it will go to appeal. So I cannot use my own sensibilities to say, because I'm actually a design champion, that's awful. I just can't do that. If it meets policy, it's a regulatory committee. If it meets policy, it basically has to go through. Even if it is not high design, what I want to see is better design coming forward. I don't hear anything tonight that's going to reassure me that's going to happen. One, because I do not believe that planners always understand design issues. Secondly, because the fight is always about policy and how you're treated by officers. We need to find ways of embedding good design.
But good design can only be produced by good designers.
Yeah.
So you have to have more trained people doing design, not commenting on design, although that helps. You just have to have better designers doing the work.
My question is really this idea of better design. Surely it's better place for living, which means better sort of no noise, no pollution, and all of these things are quantifiable. The sort of arbitrary decisions come in when we talk about aesthetics, and I don't think a planner should really have a say on I like it or I don't like it, because you're not really coming from a design point of view. So if we had more rules like it has been suggested from the planning point of view, we'd be able to go past this idea of we'll be able to produce something which is tolerable and is sort of a good place to live in. And then if it's nice or not nice, and better, that's something else which there can be a canon for and a vision for, and that's sort of something that has to be on the side and present, but it's not the same thing.
I think just to pick up on those, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think the problem with specific standards for noise and pollution and other environmental standards is that they don't necessarily take into account context. So building something here versus building something closer into the city or building something further out, etc. What you might reasonably expect to enjoy in terms of noise or disturbance or otherwise are going to be very different things. So if you and it's not necessarily always the case that you can just express it as an increase of a background or otherwise. You've got so it's a context-based system. It takes into account everything that's going on around it. And that's one of its positive attributes. The fact that it's not fixed to a plan. Lots of countries have plans that are actually set down zoning systems that are put into law, and it would actually require an act of Parliament to change that zoning system. And it does give you certainty. It says you can build 3 stories. It says you can build industrial. It says you can do that. But the problem with some of those plans is that they have a legacy that goes on for a significant number of years afterwards, which is that they've been trying to change it. And if you think it's slow to change the plans that we have in England, if you look at some of the plans in those other locations, the zoning systems, not all of them, I'm sure some will be much better than others, but certainly some of the difficulties of changing those plans does create a sort of lack of awareness of what's actually going on the ground in those locations. I agree with what you're saying in terms of the aesthetics of it. I don't necessarily agree the planning office is challenging what you've done in terms of aesthetics and asking you, because I think one of the things is that a lot of the design that comes before me as a planning officer has never seen an architect. I talk about back of the fag packet stuff. And the reason a lot of the stuff, I imagine, if you looked at who actually drew the plans that you're talking about at planning committee, I would say 9 times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100, the ones that you're taking exception to aren't actually drawn by architects on design grounds. Now, sometimes there's a difference of opinion on which direction you should take. What often we're looking for from a planner's perspective is to understand how you got there. And that was the whole idea of design and access statements. And sometimes they're good, and other times they're just copied and pasted. The idea is you show me, from the local context, how you got to where you're going. Are you copying things? Are you extracting points? Are you picking the best points? Or are you going for something completely different? And if you can demonstrate that story, obviously you've got to get the planning officer to read the design and access statement, which is a challenge sometimes.
You've got to get them to read it. Yeah. I think that's why come on site with a critical conservation. So the client referred to something that was explained in the answer question, referred to it, because he knew what was in there. Said within the design and access statement, I was told, I haven't read it. This is a senior officer, a rather visible corner site in a conservation area. I haven't read it.
No one wants to read design and access. People don't want to write it, then it's
Pictures, small captions, pictures and small captions.
What about site visits? I mean, I've had not read the design and access statement, and not even having been to site. You're talking about development and grounds of a listed building in the conservation area. So how can you comment on this if you haven't even been to site?
So are we saying that there's a problem that design isn't embedded within the planning system? Because a couple of the comments that comment over here about can you quantify design so that you can assess it in the current system, I don't think you can quantify all elements of design. So you need someone with the design expertise within the process to assess various elements. But I don't think the answer is found in design and access statements or design review panels, because I've seen so much damage done through design review panels because they're an add-on to the system that people go through rather than being something that is fundamental to it. And I say that because I worked for Design for London, or did work for Design for London for 5 years, and had to write design comments and planning applications that were referable to mayor, and there were so few words or sentences that we could use to try and talk about the design because it wasn't statutory. So we had to use various constitutive documents or assessments like the access to public transport as a way of saying whether use of a certain location was actually viable, rather than actually being able to turn around and say, actually this is a really badly designed building. So I think that's one issue. And then the other thing that has been consistent with quite a few of the comments tonight has been about how the planning process is applied. And I think there was a comment, a very slight comment from Speaker